Folks, welcome back to the iHealth channel, iHealth Radio with your host, Hurricane H. A new day, a great show, a discussion that is important. It's a topic I've been dealing with, talking about. Most recently, we've had quite a few guests that touch on it, but I have an expert who actually not only has done the research, but he can share with us things that will make a difference in our lives. And so, without any further ado, I have with me Dr. Robert Thompson, MD. He does integrative medicine, and he talks about a lot of stuff. He's also an author. He's got good stuff that's going on in the world that he wants to share as value, and hopefully we can make a difference in the world. Now, you're going to see he's in real practice behind him. It's an actual practical office where he practices the medicine stuff. So, with me, Robert. Hello, Robert. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Hurricane. It's been wonderful to be here.
I'm going to call you Dr. Thompson. Thank you. No problem. I'm going to call you Dr. Thompson. Is that okay?
You can call me. The podcast is going to be starting is called the Dr. Robert Show. So you can call me Dr. Robert. It's great.
All right. Dr. Robert it is.
And that's actually a Beatles song.
Oh, actually, I'm going to go
Dr. Robert. Check it out. It's a cute little song, actually.
Unfortunately, there's copyrights. Otherwise, I would use that as a theme, but I don't think I could do that. But so Dr. Robert, I love it. All right. Well, so let's talk about just the first things first. The integrative medicine and what it does and what it is. Let's just get started there, and then we can deep dive into the work that you do.
Well, let me just say that integrative medicine is been defined a lot of different ways. Some call it functional, some call it this, some call it complementary, stuff like that. I don't think it matters what word you attach to it, but it just means I care and I want to try to get it right. And I'm not dependent on drugs, but I can write prescriptions if I need to. And I don't stop trying to help patients get more healthful. And so I base that work on 5 things basically now that I'm focusing. The first one is stopping dilution. We talked a little bit about that before we got on the stream because we have a pandemic of mineral deficiency in our entire population worldwide. This is not a unique problem just to us. It's everywhere. The best thing we can do to try to help prevent it is supplement because our food is rather deficient. Unless we're growing it ourselves, and we're turning over the soil and whatever else to maintain minerals, it's a problem. And vine ripening is essential. So there are those that might have access to that would be less mineral deficient, but in general, it's a problem everywhere. And it's what led me, the author of the book, to end up with broken back and osteoporosis. Is I was diluting. I wasn't taking minerals with every glass of fluid. So I'm now teaching that we have to completely stop diluting. Don't drink without taking minerals ever again. Wow. And then the second thing I teach, and this is a really great trivia question. And, I have only had one doctor. It turns out he'd heard me lecture. One doctor in 3 years that knew the answer to this question. And I tell him, hey, don't feel ignorant because you don't know, because I didn't know. Okay, and I wrote the book, and I published the principle of substitution for the minerals for the entire animal kingdom, and something that still hasn't quite got recognized. But it's the basis of all disease that we develop. And so the most important of all the minerals in the human body turns out to be, bell ring, potassium. Potassium is the most important mineral, and 94% of it's inside the cell. So if you're not using hair to measure your potassium, you have no clue. Your doctors have no clue. The blood tests tell you 6%, 6% or 94%, which would be more reliable. I call the 6%ers the stupid doctor test. Why would you test 6% when you could test 94? Are you just stupid, doctor? Anyway, I didn't know this stuff, and I just started learning, and I realized this applies to all of us. The practice of medicine in general. If you're not measuring the most important mineral to human physiology the correct way, you have no clue. No clue about your patient's status because thyroid hormone can't work without potassium. And so the real question is, why is potassium so important? And this is what gets me. It just rocks my boat. And the answer is dipoles. Dipoles. What's a dipole? It's two poles. Two poles. What has two poles? A battery, positive and negative. So it turns out potassium forms batteries by being attached to our protein molecules at every other carbon at the negative charge. And when it attaches, it electrostatically attaches water, and that's what hydrates the human cell. So if you don't have potassium, you don't have thyroid working, and you don't have water in your cells. It doesn't matter how much you drink, you can't keep it. You can't attach it to your proteins. And so, why is that so important? Well, it turns out, what do the batteries do? It turns out all DNA replication, all DNA compaction, histones, all DNA replication, nucleosomes, all RNA synthesis, all protein synthesis, all depends on potassium. And the average person I see has about 15% of what they're supposed to have. I just got off the phone and consult with a dentist, and he had 22%. So he's just slightly above average. But what I want you to do is imagine your Tesla, if you have one. I don't, but just imagine, because it sounds nice. Okay, so if you only had 20% of your battery charge going on there, it's not going to run too well. But you don't got to take it back to all this stuff about all how it works in the batteries, protein, DNA, RNA, everything. And then 90% of the people I test worldwide on hair tissue models has a calcium excess or relative calcium excess. And what's that problem? Well, calcium's a +2 ion. And so it can stick to the protein minus charge of two proteins and zip them together. So zippers are the fourth thing that I teach. And that's from Dr. Pollack's book, Cells, Gels, and the Engines of Life, published in 2001, pages 119 to 122. Look it up, doctors. It's the most important mineral. Hair is required. It's not optional. So I tell the doctors, I said, it's time. It's time. It has to change immediately, because you're harming patients 90% of the time by restricting salt. 90% of all hypertension is caused by calcium zippers, hardening, stiffening, loss of elasticity, what we see, calcium. And we're out there recommending calcium to treat osteoporosis when they don't measure it properly, and patients already have an excess 90% of the time. Pretty pitiful. Okay, and then why the problem with zippers is, if you restrict salt, you can't pop your zippers. So salt's necessary for most functions in the body, especially adrenal and hydration of the cells with potassium, and keeping calcium from forming zippers. And that's actually the principle of muscle contraction. It's partly how I figured all that out, what was going on in the cell. Actin brings the fibers together, and sodium goes in, causes with calcium, zips the fibers together, and then sodium comes in at the speed of light and causes your muscles to contract and relax. That's amazing. And then the fifth thing I teach is also pretty much rocking the boat, and that is that ascorbic acid is a sugar molecule. It is not a vitamin, and it's 100% toxic to humans. Humans lack the enzyme to break it down. You can't make that stuff up. It's called galonolactone oxidase. Sorry, doctors. If you're doing IV and you're ascorbic acid and you're calling it vitamin C, you're lying and you're deceiving your patients. And it's wrong, and it should stop immediately. If you do a ferritin level, which is the measure of iron toxicity in the human, not iron, we can't measure iron by any test, no test. The blood tests are all fictitious. Anemia is never low iron, almost never, ever. It's always low copper, and they're not measuring it properly, so they can't recommend it. And there's imbeciles out there that are still writing articles on iron deficient anemia. Journal of American Medical Association, in April, there was an article on iron deficiency anemia, and some guy touting himself as the know-all expert on iron deficiency anemia. And everything he stated, his whole article, was wrong. It was all old information. Prior to 2009, it was that bad. It's no excuse. He called himself a teacher, and he's out there writing an article telling everybody the wrong information. That's irresponsible as far as I'm concerned. Okay. But I don't pull any punches. I just sent an email to a professor in Sweden who did a study looking at iron supplementation in child development. She's a pediatrician, obviously, PhD, MD, and she was wrong. Everything she did was wrong and harming children. and because she didn't know anything about iron and wasn't using hair tissue mimosis and copper. So we have to have copper to detox iron, and we have to have the actual C molecule, which we can only get from fresh whole food. And this is going to rock your boat too. This is really, really, really an eye popper. The maximum density of water, again, remember, I always very specific. The maximum density of water is 39.1 degrees. So if we go below that, we form ice molecules. You can't see them until it turns like slushy and hard. And but they're in there below 39.1. And as they come together, they're quite literally an atomic knife. If you look at a lake, it's one layer, one atom thick of water molecules all the way across the lake. Wow, that's amazing. And that's why ice cuts things up and breaks things down and things like that because of the trauma of the atomic knives cutting everything to pieces. I'm like, so all freeze-dried products on the market that claim to be whole C, they don't work. They're all dead. They're all killed. They don't work. I've tested every one of them. I quit testing them. None of them work. None. Zero. Garden of Life, all these other whole seed places, things like that, that none of them work. All freeze dried. So if you see a bunch of powders, and it means come from this, from that, from beets, from this, and that, and the other, it don't work. And it's going to be toxic, worse, because you're going to be getting ascorbic acid. The C molecule is 17% ascorbic acid approximately. And so when you cut it to pieces, it releases the hexuronic acid, otherwise known as ascorbic acid, since 1933, Scientific American, and that was Dr. Sayori. And what happened was that he told the world in 1937 that ascorbic acid was useless. March 13th, LA Times, 1937, the year he got the Nobel Prize. And I'm saying it's toxic. I have 23 articles that show ascorbic acid destroys the ceruloplasmin molecule. That molecule is essential, otherwise known as peroxidase, for taking iron from the used iron, Fe2, up to 3. When it goes to 3, Fe2 plus, to 3. So once it's at 3, it goes into ferritin, and ferritin moves it to the liposome and the cytoplasm. Cytoplasm moves it out of the cell. Once it goes out of the cell, it dumps the iron. Ferritin's not a measurement of iron. Remember, we have no measurement. And so if you have a low ferritin, that's really good. That means you're recycling it. You're not making it. We don't want you to make it. It's bad. It's a sign of failed iron recycling and ascorbic acid toxicity and occasionally too much iron. And we can find that by high ferritin levels. And it turns out that the incidence of hemochromatosis in the world is not 1%. It turns out it's about 5%. And it turns out that it's not autosomal recessive, is what the textbooks say. It turns out that it's a mixed penetrance. So you get two genes, whichever one turns on it, and your cells randomly tells you how much it's going to affect you. It could be as high as 80 or as low as maybe 20% expression of that gene because you have two. So heterozygous for hemochromatosis is significant. And the ferritin levels, if you get a ferritin level, it comes back from the lab and it's 180, and the normal range is like most labs around 30. It used to be 30. Now they've lowered to 15 to like 250. Well, again, I'm not sure if they can't read. Okay, so every 100 points your ferritin goes up, your death and disease, morbidity, mortality goes up 10 to 15%. So if you're at 120, you already have a 10 to 15% increase in death and disease. And remember, ferritin's not a measurement of iron. We can't measure iron. We can only know that it goes into our bodies every day by eating and drinking. And we can't get rid of it if we're men, except by dumping. So we have to be regular blood donors. I tell all my men patients, take your age minus 12, which is the average age of onset menses, because remember, women are dumping blood once a month. So that's why they live longer and they have babies. That's why they get less disease. That's why they survive their disease 80% more and 80% less disease, is they've been losing iron their whole life. So it's imperative for all male patients, all men, is starting as soon as you can, age 18. By age 18, you're already 12 donations behind. So, and you can only catch up about 4 per year. So you're already 3 years behind if you go every 8 weeks at age 18. So I just saw a patient today, 62. Well, he had never donated. So he's 100 donations behind. And so all that iron has built up in his system and can't be measured. Can't measure it. It's stored in amyloid. I know. Isn't that shocking? And that's the basic scientific information. I can't make that stuff up. I tell them I'm not that smart. I got to look it up and read about it. And when I do, I connect a lot of dots and it makes a lot of sense. But it's just so wow, dang, this is amazing. And so, well, let me just say one. So that leads to the principle that I've been teaching. It's called the Thompson-Dobereiner principle. It's based on a chemist from 1829 who published relationships of minerals. And it's interesting that it's so significant because this is why I'm saying autism should be eliminated. There's no excuse. They either listen to me or you're going to keep having it. You can't stop with the current problem. The problem is not iodine. The problem is bromine and fluoride. If you're on an asthma inhaler medication during pregnancy, we already know you have about 50% increase in autism if you use your inhaler medication during the second trimester of pregnancy. If you use it overall during pregnancy, it's a 30% increase. That's significant. The doctors that did the study from Duke and Drexel universities didn't listen. I called them. I told them they made the wrong conclusion and they didn't listen. And so they think they're so smart, but they're wrong. They concluded that it was the drug that caused it. It wasn't. And I said, no, it's the bromine. They said, well, we didn't use bromine. We used HFC. That's fluoride. And I'm like, come on, give me a break. It's a halide. It interferes with iodine by the Thompson-Dobereiner principle. And so what that means is if you look at the periodic table of the elements, there's an element on the right, element on the left, element above, element below. Those minerals oftentimes have very similar biochemical properties in their outer electron shells. They're further influenced by something called PSI classification. And what that does is it influences like a few exceptions. So if you look at the first column of the periodic table, sodium is right above potassium, but it can interfere because it has a different electron configuration. So if you look on the psi classification, everything in that, it further confirms the Thompson-Dobereiner principle because they all behave the same because they have the same electron configuration. And that's in part how they ended up in the columns of the periodic table of the elements. So in general, if you look at things, you can figure out, okay, what's wrong? And so, for instance, I figured out a new one last year. I had an engineer that came in with an extremely off-the-chart high tungsten level. And I'm like, you're not eating light bulbs. Where in the heck are you getting tungsten? And turns out he's an engineer and he works in a plant that uses a lot of lubricant with titanium. And he uses tape and things like that with titanium. And apparently it gets into the atmosphere of where he works. And so I suggested that everyone might have some toxicity. And the textbooks say that it doesn't have any toxicity. But guess what? If you look at my principle, it's going to interfere with molybdenum. Wow, how significant is that? Well, it turns out molybdenum is critical for xanthine oxidase, another heme molecule, which has 2 FES clusters in it. And so guess what? It's gonna, if you don't have molybdenum, you can't make the FES clusters for xanthine, or you can't make xanthine oxidase. And so that's a problem for iron toxicity for sure.
All right. Well, hold on, doctor. Hold on. Because I think we spent a good 20 plus minutes on technical terms. I mean, you're talking heavy duty medical terminology and really deep stuff. For the common audiences, they're probably going to get lost. So I'm going to just try to break it down a little bit based on, non-medical, right? Just for a
well, let's go
customer, client, or
backwards.
patient. Yes.
Let's go backwards. I want to hit that iodine just a little bit more. I'm going to bring this out in my podcast when it starts big time, even more. I'm sick of it. I'm really sick of it. Okay. This principle applies. It'll never change. It was first described in 1829. It's basic chemistry. They can't make me wrong because of their ignorance. Not ever again. Not doing that. Not going there. And so, what really gets me is not just elimination of autism. It's a 40% reduction, breast, prostate, pancreatic, thyroid, and ovarian epithelial cancers. 40% reduction by taking adequate iodine. An elimination of autism. I recommend everybody get at least 12.5 milligrams a day or more. And remember, iodine has no toxicity, none, zero, at any level in the human. No, zero, not any toxicity. And there's a couple things reported in literature that suggest it has this little effect. And that's just a temporary increase in TSH from a release from the iodine going in. If you see it, just kind of go slower, and it goes away almost immediately within like days. It goes a couple days, it's gone. It's nothing. It's just your body reacting to it's like, oh, I got what I want now. I'm not messed up. Because remember, every hormone in the human is iodized, not just thyroid. Estrogen, testosterone, cortisol, they're all iodized. And bromine attaches to the iodine attachment and screws them up. So guess what? If you got bromine, you got endometriosis, you got breast tenderness, you got menstrual cramps, you got dysfunctioning hormones. You put those patients on iodine, in 3 months, it's all gone. I know, endometriosis. I used to do surgery for that for 30 years. And I learned this principle and I'm like, dang, put them on iodine. And sure enough, they all get better within 3 months. And I figured out it was all related to the toxicity of bromine. Remember, you get that flour and bread products, berries in the grocery store, often sprayed with it if they're not organic. They can be fumigated with bromine gas if they are organic. So you might still get some, even if it's organic. And apparently there's some really scary sources out there. Like they put bromine in certain jars and cans and bottles. I had a patient last year, she did her bromine iodine test, challenge test, and she was 10 on an iodine. Her bromine was, her iodine was a little bit low, 50% of normal saturation. And a year later, she redid the test. Her bromine was up to 75. That's the highest I've ever seen. I'm like, dang, what's she drinking that's got bromine in it? I asked her, the only thing I know is Mountain Dew has bromine added. If you drink Mountain Dew, beware. You have a really, really severely increased cancer risk. You might be able to slightly protect yourself by taking massive doses of iodine, but why not? Can't hurt you. I take 50 milligrams a day. One of my colleagues who's written a couple books on it, Dr. Brownstein, David Brownstein, he takes 75 milligrams a day. And I'm like, he's like, why not, Robert? Can't hurt me. I'm like, okay, David.
Well, doctor. So let me just take it from the start again, because there's quite a bit of stuff there. And I mean, I have a little bit of a bio, background, so that I can capture quite a bit of what you said. But I think I just want to break it down and dumb it down a little bit, just so we can level up, in terms of the terminology and the knowledge. Well, the first thing you talked about, and by the way, I want to say, wow to you, because you've defied everybody's journals and stuff in terms of what we've been told in the world. I mean, really, what we hear today, what we've been conditioned to hear about medicine and standard testing and stuff, you pretty much just made the claim right now that it's all wrong with that. Well, not all of it, but there's plenty of wrong into it. Whether talking about the vitamin C or absorbic acid, which is not exactly the same thing. You talked about the iron, which is really the copper deficiency, not the iron deficiency. You talked about things that standardized, to all of us. I mean, iodine, we're told, it's not good for you. I mean, they took it away from the salt, yet it is the best thing for you. So you're talking almost the opposite of what the standard, knowledge that we have currently in terms of like what we need in terms of our daily, adequate intake of things, right? Now, you started the discussion with the deficiency of minerals in the whole world. Now, we know that is a fact because we know that our food today is completely depleted. It's not nutrition, heavy. It's if unless you get some supplements, or you really have some real organic, natural grown home food stuff, in the backyard, there's a good chance you're not getting all the stuff. It is a fact that we know that
And
there's so.
remember, if you freeze it, you destroy the vitamin C
I'm
also.
gonna,
So you have
yeah.
to eat it all fresh or dry it.
I'm gonna get
One
to
of
that
the,
one. I'm gonna get to the
okay.
atomic, slicers, the water atomic stuff. But it's amazing. Like the soils have been destroyed. I mean, because the way we use them, it's not seasonal. We refurbish that soil over and over. There's no real nutrition, into it. So we're taking really nothing, no air. And I think that's causing a lot of us. I mean, osteoporosis, as you said, there's people having thyroid problems, hormonal problems. You talked about autism, which is a high incidence today, and you just almost cured it. I mean, if I listen to you right now, I mean, we shouldn't have any. If I listen to you right now, or anybody who's watching or listening right now, we could literally get rid of all this bad stuff that's happening to all of us. Breast cancer, prostate cancer, all these things.
I consider it malpractice for an OBGYN doctor to not recommend iodine during pregnancy. This information was reported in 2002 or 2001 in 18 states. And they showed that it increased babies' IQs by 13.2 and 12.8 points. What they didn't do is look at the incidence of autism, unfortunately, and then of a comparative study that would have told them what they needed to know. But it can't change. It's a principle. And so these substitutions have to occur. And so if you're being exposed to bromine, you don't have enough iodine, you got a problem. And it's a big problem. And we should be done with it. It's time to recognize it, get the bromine out of our flour and bread products like they did in Canada and Australia. Our FDA doesn't seem to care about us. I mean, they want to tox us, they want to kill us, they want to recruit all these vaccines that have toxicity, and they won't stop. It seems like they're the hip pocket of the drug companies or something. Everyone sees it, everybody witnesses it. I mean, they're earning billions, they control everybody. They kill off my friends that say things like maybe what I'm saying. Rashid Buttar was killed last year and murdered, and second poisoning, and for speaking out against mRNA vaccines, basically. And I think it's so much worse than we could have ever imagined. Um, like I said, we talked about at the beginning of the show, everyone's been infected, whether they got the vaccine or not. When I have a patient who's got the vaccine, I literally take their hands and say, I'm sorry, but guess what? I didn't get it and I have it too. And so this is why we're seeing so much sudden death in those people that weren't vaccinated, just like those that were. Everyone's infected, everyone. And all those people who didn't get the vaccine, they all think they're okay. No, they're not. And their doctors don't know what to look for because they don't understand the disease. When I start my podcast, that lecture is going to be available. So they might get some understanding of my 2021 lecture, but it won't change. It's basic science. And so it's not an opinion. Oftentimes they try to say, oh, that's your opinion. I'm like, well, it's basic science. I don't know. 2 + 2 is 4. It doesn't change because I have an opinion, right? Serious.
Well,
Science is supposed to be like mathematics. It's not something oh, that's your opinion. Well, that's not like that. However, one of the things that somebody pointed out to me, I said, the first rule of medicine is do no harm, and you got to stop. And what the person said to me, he said, that's opinion. I'm like, you know, he's right. They had doctors in Germany that were doing experiments on humans with no consents. They thought they were doing the world a favor, right? And their sick heads, they were like thinking they were doing original great research that was going to help other people at some point or whatever. It's sickening. It's terrible. It's not okay.
well, doctor. So you're touching on a lot of heavy stuff, and uh, and it's amazing because you said it clearly that everybody kind of knows, but like we know, but we don't want to know. We know, but we don't know what to do. We know, but our providers may not know or may not be able to change things for us.
I think what I see is not everyone, a lot of people are really trying hard. And a
Yeah,
lot
that
of
is true.
doctors are, and a lot of doctors, especially in my field, are really trying to help. I am personal acquaintances with Joe Mercola, and last conference I was at, he literally broke down in tears because he's singly and uniquely aware of the state of health of what's going on worldwide, and he wants to change it is somehow by opening centers of integrative care. And
How about Dr. Mercola?
yeah,
Yeah, he's big with that.
yeah, he's a special guy.
Well, he's out there. He's trying to make a difference.
He's absolutely brilliant, and I just am amazed at the ability of many of my colleagues to communicate and assimilate information. It all goes together. So, like last conference we talked a lot about anti-aging, and it's different supplements that are quite remarkable for that. And so I'm still learning. We also have had some remarkable results with using blood tests for screening for cancer instead of waiting until you got a disease. And it turns out that we can detect cancer up to 8.5 years before they can see it on a mammogram. Mammograms should be abolished. There's no excuse for them. They're not scientifically valid. They're wrong 24 to 48% of the time. They increase your risk of breast cancer 1 to 4% under age 50 and at least 1% after age 50 per mammogram. And if you do lifetime mammogram screening, you increase your risk of breast cancer 52%. The country of Switzerland has abandoned mammograms. They won't offer them. It's an unreliable test. You can do blood tests and pick up cancer in the blood. I'm like, why are they waiting? And
Also,
when they have a patient with cancer, how come they want to palpate their breast and do another mammogram every year or every 6 months instead of doing the blood test? I think every single patient with cancer, if they've been treated and they're out a year or two or three or whatever, they should get the blood test. These things don't come back. They just didn't go away, and they're not doing the proper test to measure it. And I found there's no excuse for that, except for they don't know how to treat a patient with cancer unless they can give chemotherapy or radiation. They don't try. And that's like, hey, you chose the field. I mean, if you can diagnose it when it's stage 0, I mean, maybe you're not going to make $20,000 on your per chemotherapy 6 times, but nevertheless, you're going to help people and you're going to stop cancer before it becomes a disease. I presented this paper. We had 32 patients with cancer, and we had 80% of the patients we treated went into remission during the study. After the study, and more went into remission. So I just lost your picture, but I
oh,
think
you
you can
lost me.
still.
No, no. Well, so that I'm gonna make it back here, so it's all good. I'm back.
There you are.
But so it's amazing, the stuff that you're talking about. I mean, there's so much stuff, and we can spend hours. And I love the idea that you're going to start your podcast to talk about all these things. And would love to invite your podcast into the network as part of our programming. But that's a whole different discussion we can have past post the discussion. But so you mentioned, I'm just going to go to the basic things that you talked about. First of all, it
Yes, sir.
seems that testing alone can make a difference way in advance. I mean, in the case of cancer, there are treatments that can be done without the chemo stuff and still get the right results. As you said, these things don't, come back. They just never go away because you didn't treat them right. So that's another big note there. But I want to go back to, because I did read something, literally about a month ago, that the cause of our all health is the lack of nutrients in our body. If we had all the proper
Energy.
nutrition and energy,
Energy.
none of the stuff. We had the right air, the right water, no fluorides, no barium, all these things that are like, really hurting our systems. We might not even, cancer cannot live there. We don't have sugars. We're not going to have anything to feed the cancer. We're not going to have these cells mutate. Although the cancer is a natural process, cells kind of mutate, but then you have the right, immune system, it gets rid of them. So at least that's what the experts in immunology and even like autoimmune, specialists. So there's a very good correlation between good, efficient nutrients, and nutrition into our system and a healthier body and even anti-aging and all the stuff that you mentioned. All the stuff is real. And the thing is that today we hear about these things all the time. And then there's quite a bit. I think I want to say thank you to social media in a way, because it gave a voice to a lot of experts such as yourself and plenty more that could not be, mainstream in a way, right? Because your not your opinion, but your statements may not be well accepted by quite a bit of audiences because you are challenging the status quo. Is what the status is. We want these things to be the way it is now. Is there a back reason behind it? Is there a motive behind why things are the way they are? There's probably financial gain. There's profit. There's all the stuff. You said something earlier lightly where you mentioned the idea that you don't use drugs as much. And that's another thing that is important. I mean, a lot of treatment today is like, hey, we got a problem, let's drug, let's do this, let's add these things. Fluoride, you mentioned that. I mean, we know it's in waters, we know it's in our toothpaste, and now you talk to any dentist, you want to have toothpaste. Although there are natural ways, it's really friction and other things you can have, natural stuff and be able to take care of your gum and stuff. So people that do the research, people that actually find good journals and studies, yeah, I guess books such as your books, they will be able to do better. But unfortunately, that's not the standard because we all kind of have this system that's been designed for everybody to follow through. From the minute you're like you said, from pregnancy, you're getting the wrong stuff. Like we hear you mentioned calcium versus potassium. That's a big one. you know,
Well, yeah, and think about the fact this is something else about pregnancy, which is so wrong. We know in subsequent pregnancies, there's increased risk of birth defects and miscarriage the more pregnancies you have. Well, why is that? You're losing 4 pounds of minerals out of your body to each pregnancy. I mean, we're off 72% water, 28% minerals on average. So guess what the baby is? And the placenta and the amniotic fluid. It's all coming out of mom. It's minerals loss. Its average is about 4 pounds per pregnancy. If you consider a woman's pre-pregnancy weight was 150 and you take out 28% of that, I'm sorry, you take out the weight of the baby, 4 pounds, what percent is that of the total body mass? 28% of 150. What's that? 30, let's see, it'll be 38. Okay, so 38 pounds of minerals in the body, you lose four of them. That's over 10% of your body's total mineral mass within one pregnancy. Um, that's a problem. It really is. And so no OBGYNs are addressing it. And they think like because the prenatal vitamins have some minerals in it, they're getting minerals. No. Remember, I was taking minerals and I still ended up with osteoporotic back because, well, it could be a psychology reason also, according to my PhD love. I I don't know, but I think that it was worse in my back than my hip. I don't nothing in my hips, just my back. And so there were some things going on in my life at the time. And my sweetheart said, the person who's supposed to be watching your back was stealing from you. And that's why you lost him out of your back. Your subconscious knew something was going on and wasn't protecting your back. And I'm like, well, that's very interesting. It's changed her practice of psychology. And she's one of the top in the world in hypnosis and trauma, juvenile children's traumatic experiences. And it's completely changed her experience because of using minerals in her practice. So she can begin to recognize who needs copper, who should avoid it, who's got a stress problem, who needs to treat it and get better. And she had the wonderful pleasure of having lunch with a couple of children that I've treated for a couple of years. I did a consult on the night before I went on the last conference I went to, and about a week before I was going to Houston, and my little young 9-year-old patient said to me, Dr. Thompson, can we meet you when you come down here? And I said, I don't know. I can't use his name on here, but I said, I don't know, but I'll check my schedule. I'm staying with family, and if it works out, I'll come. And so I discovered I had to drive right through Houston to get to Dallas on Wednesday. And I said, why don't we meet for lunch someplace along that trip? And it turned out it worked out perfect. We had this hour and a half to lunch, at least, maybe 2 hours, with these two young ones that both used to have ADD, were out of control, couldn't teach, couldn't do this, couldn't do that. The first month we put this young man on the right minerals, he put 18 seconds on his freestyle time, 100-yard freestyle. He was swimming at the time. Now he's doing karate. But he's so smart. They sit there and talk to us like adults the whole dinner. I mean, the whole lunch. And my sweetheart was just blown away. And they drew me a picture and they made some really sweet letters and they wrote in cursive. And I'm like, dang, that's really good writing. And I asked Dad, I said, where are they at now? He said, well, they're about a grade and a half ahead. I'm like, well, they've made up 3 years at least in the last two. You better hold on. They're going to keep accelerating. They're very intelligent. It's just they had some mess up of the connections due to copper and zinc imbalances and a few other things. We straightened that out, and thyroid, a little bit of thyroid hormone resistance, straighten that out. And next thing you know, they're just unbelievably, incredibly wonderful. And I've seen it so many times, it just blows Mary Kay away. She says, you got to report all this stuff and tell everybody about this. It's really cool. And I'm like, yeah, I see it, and I expect it, though, because that's what I do. And I've been doing it for so long. I've been using hair tissue mouse in my practice now for over 24 years. And I found now, as of about 3 or 4 years ago, I tell my patients now, if you don't have a hair tissue mouse, don't bother. Don't come see me. It's the most important of all tests. I'd be a complete hypocrite if I didn't ask for it, right?
Can you repeat the test, please?
Hair tissue mineral analysis. There's 3 companies in the United States that offer it. Doctors Data in Chicago, ARL in Arizona, and TEI in Houston. TEI is head and shoulders better than the rest. Everything ARL reports came from TEI originally, a little bit doctored, not as good. Everything and doctors data, they just still don't have it together in their reporting system. They leave out the most important of all the ratios, the calcium potassium ratio. And so I'm pretty much sticking with TEI until it does it. And you can get it if you go to my site, aurorahealthandnutrition.com, you can order the heritage analysis for yourself if your doctor's not going to do that.
Well, doctor, it's amazing. By the way, it's fascinating the stuff you're saying. I mean, truly, anybody watching or listening, they're probably like, "Whoa!" I mean, they're just probably just looking like, you know, stuck in the moment, right? Because you're hearing stuff like, this is like the super awakening. It's like this is where we need to be and where we are too far away, but it can all be reversed. I mean, what you stated is really something that anybody can still. It's never too late. We can do things to really reverse things and get our bodies in the right regulatory format, and therefore it gets back to where it's supposed to be and designed to be. But now, it's an interesting. You talked about this. You mentioned this a couple of. That's why I asked about the test. You talked about like we're not doing the hair test. We're doing the blood, but it's showing 6% as opposed to 94%. Now, it is funny because I worked in a company where they had a rule about smoking, no smoking, right? And so they did I guess nicotine test, right? And when they were in doubt, they actually used hair analysis to find if you have nicotine, because people can stop, not smoking for 45 days and it's disappearing, but it's some DNA in your hair for 6 months. Now, if we can use that for nicotine for a basic element, why don't we use that for everything else that we need? Instead of, as you said, as the blood. That's just the question that came to mind as you were talking, because I'm like, what gives? I mean, one is just, basic entry level to a job. This is your life. This is your health. This is your stuff. And that's where it's all stored. You're talking about, the calcium, for example, versus potassium. Now, we hear stories. I mean, monkeys eat bananas. They're pretty good. There's plenty of potassium in there. Now, the question, of course, we can talk organic, non-organic. But humans, I've been seeing something actually on social. If you take 2 bananas a day, this is what's going to happen to you. And I guess the introduction of potassium. Now, there's also this discussions like, well, potassium is radioactive. How much potassium do you need because you don't want to have the radiation? So there's a lot of contradictory information that's out there. Some of it is good, some of it is bad, but we need the
I would
expertise to
suggest
break it down.
there's a lot of ignorance from not doing proper measurement. That's the
Mm,
key.
mm.
I can't find any articles on osteoporosis anywhere in the world published that are reliable. Not one. They're not doing proper measurements. They have no idea what they're looking at. You have to use hair and look at the calcium level before you start looking at, oh, is calcium related to osteoporosis or not? Well, no, it's minerals. So it's calcium's just one of them, and you can't make bone without all of them. And so it's really short-sighted and bordering on oh gosh, malpractice at this point for a radiologist to continue to recommend calcium and vitamin D in the treatment of osteoporosis. Less than 10% of patients need calcium. All of them need minerals. So I don't know why they keep choosing ignorance. I don't. I don't know why when I tell doctors this stuff, it doesn't seem to change their behavior oftentimes. I just scratch my head and kind of like wonder, like I went and see an internal medicine doctor that made some comment in a medical record that was inappropriate, to call him on it. And he agreed not to do that anymore. But I told him about a little bit about what I do and the heritage analysis measuring the most important mineral, which of course he didn't know. And then he didn't know what it did or why it did it. And then I got done with all that. He says, well, I'm not going to use it. And so I'm not going to change anything because of what you say.
So, doctor, so a question. I'm sure somebody out there is going to ask this question. You know, you are a doctor by base by practice, right? But you choose to really look at the right side, like what can work for us. As you said, do no harm is why you do the medicine, right? But yet it is not the practice. Why is it that it is not the mainstream? Why is it that the regular education, medicine, I guess doctors' education, not touching on these things? I mean, it's available. You have it. Some of it is dating back to the 1800s, so it's not like it's not available. There's almost a systematic educational system that is not touching on these things for somewhat of a purpose. I don't want to speculate on what that purpose is, but it sounds like it's not like it's a secret. It's not like it's not something that doctors can do because you're doing it and others like Dr. McCullough and others, but it's not your mainstream. But I mean, for me as just a normal patient or person, I mean, I'm like, I would love to know why that's not the case. I mean, this should be taught in the school, basic medicine, basic elements, and what to look for, what tests, what not to do, if X-rays or like pap smear. I mean, not pap smear, like mammograms are not good for you because you get all that X-ray business going on, and it's not going to do stuff. It's actually increasing your risk as opposed to decreasing the risk. All these things that you stated in the last half hour, 45 minutes, I'm absorbing them right now from you. And I'm sure doctors are smarter than me. I mean, technically they are. I mean, they go to these schools and they have good brains and they study for these years. So this stuff should be like elemental stuff for them. You talked about the periodic, elements and how the electrons and stuff and which elements touch on what and which ones kind of cover the others or at least have similar, effect on the body. You talked about the basic stuff, the barium and stuff. You talked about copper. There you go. I guess she's right there with you.
Yeah, I can't practice medicine and look at hair tooth mouse without this. And this is the other thing that really gets me is it's called uh oh, can't the lights are blocking it out.
If you back it
Psi
up a little bit.
classification. Anyway, I have to look at that every now and then. I mean, most of it's memorized in my head now, but every once in a while when I see something like the um was it the titanium rubidium thing or molybdenum thing? I was no tungsten molybdenum. I just scratched my head and said, that's pretty cool. That's really cool. No one else ever figured that out before. How is tungsten toxic? And I just look at my principle and periodic table and I found exactly where and how. And I'm like, wow. And so one of the things coming back to what you were talking about there that I see unfortunate in the practice of medicine today is, you look at young men and women thinking about becoming a doctor. Most of them have these idealistic views of how they're going to go help and change and things like that. And then they come out of there and it's all about how much money can I make in this specialty or that specialty. And then their training has nothing really to do with nutrition or deficiency or corrections. Um, the, and they don't understand anything about this mineral physiology, and I don't know why they're not teaching it. One of the radiologists here at the hospital in Soldotna, where I went, actually graduated from the University of Washington in 2002, and Dr. Pollock published no 2000. Dr. Pollock worked there, professor. They published his book in 2001. I'm like, did you ever hear about Dr. Pollock or read any of his books or anything like that? Never heard about it. I'm like, dang, it's basic science. So there's a problem. The basic science doesn't translate to the practice of medicine for way, way too long. And I'm guilty. I mean, I just stated what we were talking before. I wrote the book, first book in 08, second one in 2014. And I didn't learn about Dr. Pollock's book and the dipoles and zippers and potassium being number one until May of 21. It took me 20 years to learn that. And it was already published. So I don't know necessarily how we're going to help shorten that. In my lecture, I say its average is 17 years. And so I was a little bit below average. I'm like, dang.
Well, there's a lot of information out there. I'm sure there's a lot of resource, right? But you think like the basic elements, right, should all be consistent across the world. And here's the thing: you mentioned something very interesting that the way Europe and other parts of the world treat it is different than us. Like you just give the example of Switzerland, removing some testing because it is abolished. I mean, we hear this. There are foods that are banned, ingredients that are banned in other countries that are still used in our foods in the States. So as you said, Canada and other parts of the world, they have different ways of looking at things than we do. Yet the medicine, I mean, we live in a global village now. Everything is connected. Information from Europe or Canada or Asia is available to all of us or to all the
My,
doctors.
my biggest concern is, honestly, is that they're destroying that which we have and they won't listen. I can't make this stuff up. The maximum density water is 39.1. If your refrigerator set on 36, you're killing all your fruits and vegetables if they're in your refrigerator. Anything fresh is killed by ice molecules. So all this, Costco is selling everything at 34, and our local grocery 34. Everything's at 34. And I don't, they seem to tell me that there's some rule someplace in some health department that that's what they're supposed to use. And I'm like, I can't find it. and there's no science to support it. And so why don't they try 42? I turned my refrigerator up to 40 and half of my fresh turkey froze on one side near the blower. And I'm like, whoops, that's a problem. So I turned it up to 42. And I know. Now I put all the pasteurized jars and cans and stuff like that in the corners, everything fresh in the center and up high in my refrigerator, and everything lasts longer. And it's pretty cool. I put like everything that can go in, like chard and kale and anything that can stand up, asparagus, put them in glasses of water in the refrigerator. I learned that from Dr. Oz, and they last a long time and stay fresh, and they don't dry out and shrivel and get nasty. So it's pretty
Yeah,
fun. But go to the local the local farmers markets. Buy everything fresh that you possibly can. And if you don't eat it all, dry it. It's great in soup later, like mushrooms, perfect for soup later. And mushrooms are a great source of copper. So if you need it, it's really good. Don't let stuff spoil. Get yourself a dryer and dry your berries. Don't freeze them.
well, well,
Make
Doctor,
fruit leather.
it's
Fruit
funny.
leather.
It's funny. I'm listening to you, I follow up, a lot with Barbara O'Neill, Dr. Barbara O'Neill. I'm sure you've heard of her, and she's pretty sensational on the social. You are touching on similar stuff that she's talking about, right? It's like the natural process, the good stuff, non-pasteurized, not I guess homogenized, and all the stuff that's being ultra processed, around the factory business. I mean, this is the first time actually, and I'm close to this discussion because I look for these things because we have the nutritious channel, we have the high health channel, but it's funny because no one has mentioned the temperature itself can make a difference in how your food is capturing the
No.
information or not. Because a lot of people, oh, let's get a frosty smoothie, whatever, and you get it from the freezer, and they're like dried strawberries from last year. So obviously, that according to what you just stated, those strawberries have no nutrition effect. Period. It's basically just flavor.
Sugar. You can taste the difference. For instance, so that's how to know. So if you taste a fruit or vegetable and taste slightly sour or bitter, that means it got too cold. If you take your vegetable home or your fruit and you cut through it and it looks mushy inside, it got too cold. All the ice molecules cut it up inside. It's worthless. There's no ascorbate, no vitamin C in there whatsoever. It's all killed. It's all dead.
Good example. I think that what you just stated is something that it is happening today. Like for example, you go buy eggs here in the States, the eggs are in the fridge. You go overseas, they don't freeze. They don't actually put the eggs on freezer or a fridge. They keep them in a natural setting. They're outside of the fridge, because the coating actually does all the job for them, and they last a good distance in terms of time frame. You know, I mean, we have practices that don't make sense, and we're the
Yeah.
only ones. Why is that? I mean, we're not we think we're the better ones in the world in terms of teaching and being ahead of the game, but it seems like we're behind the eight ball, not ahead of it.
Well, there's a couple things that I do that I should share, but I think that could be quite beneficial because we have such a problem from fast food everywhere. I know when I travel, especially short trips, inevitably I'm getting some fast food. So I've learned to blend my salads. It had the I started it about after I got some root canal teeth all removed at the same time. And it was just easier to blend it than chew it. And I'm like, I learned to love it, but because of the spices, and I learned that I liked it a little bit more watery. And I like it hot. Some people don't. Some people like it garlicky. I mean, it doesn't matter. Find what you like. Blend all your salads. You can't chew them into that smaller particle size. And what you end up doing is sweeping your colon of bad fats and toxins. And it really works. Personally, I had the largest improvement in cholesterol numbers of any patient I've ever seen with any treatment ever from blending my salads. And I mean, I could tell you, I mean, it's just mind blowing how good it was. My HDL now is up to 84. It started at 42. My VLDL is now down to 11. I started at 44. Those are really bad numbers. So I'm like, dang. My triglycerides went from 196 to 89 from blending my salads. Are you kidding? I didn't have to take any medicine. I started blending my salads. But remember, it only removes bad fats. So my HDL went up. I'm like, that is so cool. I mean, it's remarkable, but it also improves your colon habits and things like that. And generally suggest that in order to, if we really have a healthy colon, we poop every time we eat like an animal. That's what they do. They poop every time they eat. I'm like,
Well,
dang.
that means the system is good. Like the good enzymes, good system, good gut, flora, and everything is working, so it's okay. Well, here's the thing. You're talking about blending your salad. It's so basically you make your salad and you just blend it up. And very, how consistent. I mean, what's the consistency? I mean, is it liquidy? Is it just chopped? To a degree where it's easier to digest.
Well, it can go anywhere from baby food to watery, and it just depends on how much water you add as you're blending it. I generally like it slightly watery. I don't want it sloshing up on my face and down on my shirt because it all of a sudden came all at once out of the glass. So I've learned a few little things with it. But it's so nice to come home and you just take your glass out of the refrigerator, give it a stir. You're drinking your salad while you're fixing dinner or at work. Like I brought it today, a fantastic snack. It's carbs, good carbs, while you're eating, while you're, in the office. And you just feel good when you drink it.
Doctor, you stated carbs. So for all of us listening and watching right now, to us, carbs is bread, is everything else but salad. So
I
so
know.
once how does that even connect? I mean, because when we think carbs, we think pasta and all sugars and all the stuff, not really salad and vegetables and things. So what's the correlation? Because that's the other thing I want to lead to is that diabetes is huge, but now how do we potentially navigate through it? I mean, you seem to have the answers to a lot of the stuff. Diabetes is a big deal. It's close to my heart because my mom's been diabetic for 30 plus years.
It's a tragedy. Another one, actually interesting. Um, it the drug-centric practice of most physicians suggests that the physiology of disease is always a drug deficiency. We know that's not true. There's an underlying cause, but we seem not to be asking the who, what, why, where questions that we try to teach our children to ask. And one of the biggest advancements we see in children is from that. And learn that set of learning. That's how you know when somebody's coming out of something that was like an autism or something like that, and all of a sudden they start asking questions. It's pretty cool. And don't take them for granted. It's that's how I keep learning. I keep asking questions, and next thing you know, I get led to a new answer, and it's so exciting. Like, wow, how can you ever get tired of practice medicine when you keep seeing people getting better all the time? Just about, not all, not 100%, but pretty close. I get really pissed off when I lose a patient from cancer or something like that. I'm like, I don't know if anything makes me more angry because of not just that I lost that person, but that the cancer defeated me, right? In the sense that I couldn't figure out how to reverse it in that person or that patient. And but that said, it's not everyone knows it's not my fault, but I still feel personally responsible for the fact that I didn't know enough or I didn't make all the right recommendations or something like that. I don't know. But there's a few things that I think are just non-negotiable from that standpoint. And I think hair tissue analysis is non-negotiable at this point. As I pointed out in my lecture, is that the world has missed it. Remember, Dr. Warburg in 1931 got the Nobel Prize for describing anaerobic glycolysis, the effects of changing cells with loss of energy. They changed to anaerobic glycolysis. And that was a herring that was basically precedes cancer. And so, and Dr. Signori came along, he wrote a fantastic book in 1972 called The Living State, in which he described energy, energy, energy. The whole book is on energy. I'm like, dang, this guy was so ahead of his time and so smart. I mean, he described most of the Krebs cycle to begin with. If you go on, Dr. Thomas Seyfried in Boston College, he wrote his book, Cancer and Metabolic Disease in 2014. And in that book, again, it came all back to the energy. But remember, the world has missed it. Dr. Pauling missed it. Dr. Signori missed it. Dr. Warburg missed it. The whole world has missed it. You have to have potassium and dipoles for the DNA to work and for cellular hydration. So when you see prion proteins that are misshapen and shrunken and no water on them, are they the problem? No, the problem was potassium. and you didn't measure it properly, and so you don't have any water on your cells, and you got too much calcium. So what do you get? Zippers, and that's not good. That's shrunken, misshapen proteins, and so we have to go back to the significance of that stuff big time.
Well, so, doctor, it's interesting because I know this just from just my own research and just being in the fitness world. You know, you drink a lot of water, you want to get a lot some potassium, like you get a couple bananas, right? It's like it's something that's a rule. We hear this all the
I
time,
know.
but like
I
I mean, that's pretty basic. How is it that we're
dang.
missing that?
I had to laugh because at the last medical conference I was at, one of the really smart teachers in the United States, and one of my, I would consider her a mentor to some degree, Pamela Smith in Florida. She's just absolutely brilliant and professor and things like that. Okay, with a few more minutes. And she at the last conference brought out the fact that she sees people like all the time that are hypothyroid, and she wants to go up and tell them, "Did you know that you're hypothyroid?" And I thought I was the only one that was like that. I had to laugh. I'm super. Do you know you're hypothyroid? No, my doctor did a test. He says it's not my thyroid. Mm-hmm. Well, that test is not reliable. So,
Well, so doctor, you mentioned something that we can do tests in your web through your website that are more efficient that just to compare to whatever your standard doctor will give you. Just even for just the listeners around the world right now,
look,
they can do
just
that, right?
thyroid hormone can't work without potassium.
Mm.
And I ask doctors, I ask them all the questions like a teacher would. And I want them to ask me questions. And if I get an I don't know, I'm gonna tell, but I'm gonna like, dang, better write that down, go look that up. Um, they just we have to look at that potassium is so critical to everything that the body does. And if without the proper measurement, you can't make the proper conclusions and you can't give the proper treatments, not ever. It's not going to happen. Oh, you might get lucky 10% of the time. There are 10% of people out there that need calcium. And the question is, who is it? And so when people listen to me sometimes and they want to run out and take a whole bunch of potassium because they know it's really important and really good for you. And no, don't do that till you test. You want to test first because maybe you've got a stress pattern. Maybe you're retaining potassium. Maybe your hypothyroidism's because when you retain potassium, you retain lithium or rubidium, the Thompson-Doe principle, and that blocks the exchange of potassium. Where does thyroid hormone work? On the outer mitochondrial membrane, it controls the rate of exchange of molecular hydrogen and potassium. That's what it does. Only T3. So, and I've been testing patients on synthetic T4 for 14 years now, and I'm up to 1,870 patients, and I've only found 3 that were adequately treated. And I can't explain how they were adequate. I'm like, but I tested and they're fine. Okay, keep taking your Synthroid. It seems to be working okay in your case 3 times out of 1,870 patients and counting. I get to 2,000. I think that's a paper.
Well, doctor. So, what's a good source of potassium? I mean, I mentioned bananas, but like I'm sure there's others that can be readily available, maybe more organic, or
Well,
a supplemental format.
you talked a little bit, and I did too, about food. I still think food is one of our best sources of everything. Just remember, you have to get fresh. You don't want it to be chilled to 34 degrees if possible. I can't buy good food where I live in Alaska and much of the year because in the wintertime, they're not using climate controlled trucks. It ships up to Seattle on the barge for 2 days, and then sits in Anchorage one day, and then it gets trucked down overnight and sits in the parking lot till they empty it. If it's minus 5 degrees outside, guess what? Everything in that truck is destroyed, and they don't see it. They take it out of there and they let it warm up and sell it like it's fresh, and they call it fresh, and it's not. It's destroyed. And so we need to have a better accountability with regards to the temperature, as well as the toxins that it could be in our food, like glyphosate, and that's a tragedy. Another
Glyphosate.
story, another
Oh
time.
yeah, we got a lot around that business going on.
Yeah.
Well. So, doctor, I know you have to go, but one more thing. You mentioned something about the iron in the blood that we're too many years behind in terms of de-ironizing our body.
Yeah,
how do how do we do that?
remember, it's really simple. If you're a male, you know, menstrual periods are babies. So all the iron you eat and drink going into your body, and some people are still thinking they need to supplement iron. I'm like, dang. your doctor needs to go read a little bit, and he's harming you if he's recommending iron over 99.999% of the time. I mean, it's so rare have iron deficiency in the human. It's almost impossible. Copper deficiency is very prevalent. And so we have to remember to get things fresh more often and supplement like your life depends on it. It does.
It does.
And the two most important things we put in our body are water and minerals. And I reverse that because I realized after I deluded myself that it's easy to drink water. You got to do something to take minerals. So I put my mineral bottles in here. I got one right here next to me in the car, in the kitchen, in the bathroom, next to the TV, at my computer, at my office. I've actually even put them in the other exam room because I find that we're all lazy. We want to drink and we don't want to stop at doing what we're doing and get up and go get some minerals and come back. But if they're sitting right there, oh yeah, I better take my minerals. And so you get more conscious. Remember, we drink 6 to 8 glasses typically of something fluid a day, and every one of those glasses should have minerals should come along with it. It should be the maximum dose your GI can tolerate, and don't be surprised if you're deficient and you might have osteoporosis and you're a man because you don't have enough minerals in your diet. And I just did a consult on this dentist. He had about an average about 15% of the minerals in his body he was supposed to have. And so we're doing a bone density test on him because I don't want anybody to be like me and end up with a broken back because they didn't do their test.
Thank you, doctor. Quick question. You mentioned iodine, but what about salt, or is that a combination? I mean, because
That's a,
there's a
that's a,
there's a whole thing about more salt today as opposed to less salt
that's a
because we've been told not to have salt.
That's a really good question, actually. The problem is in salt that's iodized, most of it evaporates out of the salt because it's not supersaturated. Sea salt's supersaturated. So if you see sea salt sold and it says not a source of iodine, it's been doctored. If you see sea salt and has iodine added, it's been doctored. You can't add anything to a supersaturated solution. It's naturally made by God in the ocean as all the Great Lakes and continents drain and mix together. And so um, iodine is really, really important more today because of our exposure to bromine and fluoride. So remember that if you're on an asthma inhaler and it says HFC, the F is fluoride. Every time you take a puff, you should be taking your iodine to counteract it, or you grow up and you can learn to expect cancers related to bromine and or side effects related to bromine interfering with iodine. And so it's a very serious problem, very poorly taught, poorly recognized by most everyone in the medical business at this point. And so all I can do is keep teaching. But I realized after I got some help that I sat down with a publisher and I told him about all the books in my head. I think we got to 15. He's like, Robert, you're going to be spending the rest of your life editing. Look, I got all these books down, and then he takes my lectures and uses AI. And next thing you know, I've got another book to edit. So I think that and then when our podcasts, we're going to record those and have articles, make them, sort of focus on topic centric and get to the point where we can produce some more articles and get this information more well disseminated. Um, I'm kind of an enigma doctor. I live in this rural, beautiful place of Alaska, and I like it. And I don't mind the cold or the dark or whatever. It's just I love hunting and fishing and getting outdoors and cross country skiing and snow machining and four wheeling and all the things we do and boating and halibut fishing and on and on.
So quickly, doc, two things you mentioned right there: fishing and hunting. So carnivore meats type of thing, proteins and fish, omega 3s. What's that? I mean, how bad is it for us? In terms
So
of those things.
I don't know. It varies from place to place. I think my biggest beef is the American Dental Association not admitting their fault and not taking responsibility and not terminating dumping mercury down the drain in every dentist's office in the United States so we can no longer accept those that are smart certified. So we can no longer eat tuna. If you eat tuna, you're foolish. You're getting a massive dose of mercury from your dentists. I eat I love ahi tuna. I just love it. And I fix it. It's so delicious. It's amazing. And I haven't eaten it in probably over 10 years because I ate it for 6 months and my mercury level went up 500%. I was only doing it about once every 2 weeks. My mercury level went up 500%. And I'm like, dang, it's just impossible. And so I blame all the dentists and I see them. I tell them to their face, you're the reason I can't I can't eat tuna. Not really you, but collectively, your organization won't police itself. They won't stop doing root canals when they've been proven to be harmful. I gave a review article to one dentist and it had 98 references. And he's like, well, I just don't know if I believe that. I'm like, excuse me, I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus. I think there's science. There's 98 articles there. Which one would you take exception to, doctor? And of course, he hadn't read it. He hadn't read it.
Wow.
And he was
Wow.
just giving his stinking stupid opinion because maybe the money is more important that he makes from doing those procedures than doing the right thing. I don't know. I just don't know. I struggle with that. Mary Kay loves that about me. A lot of people respect that. I'm one of those people. I can't do the wrong thing. I have to try to do the right. Doesn't mean I don't, but I don't do it purposefully. And I discovered that about people last year too. There are those that can hurt other people, and there's those that can't. This never would. They would never purposely try to hurt somebody else. Those are my kind of people.
Well, we hope there's a lot of those out there in the world. So, well, thank you, Doc. I know you're restricted in time. I'd love to for you to come back and we talk more because I mean, there's a lot more that we can, dive into. Now, your website, you have supplements in there, you have information. People can also consult with you if they need to get guidance on what's the best,
Yes.
format. So, how do we do that?
Well, the best, I think everyone should start with if they go to Aurora, like the Northern Lights, health and nutrition, all one word typed together.com, and they can order the hair tissue analysis for themselves. And then I encourage patients to get help after that because there's a lot of old information and that hair tissue analysis report hasn't been updated in forever. And it's one of my goals in time is to take over the management of that company. I don't know. I've just qualified superly. And so uh, I, I want, and it's in 38 countries worldwide now. And so some of the other anti-aging stuff I do kind of is it could be joined with that. And I'm going to have books coming out on the how to for doctors and teaching them all this interactions of minerals and things so that I've got a lot of work to do to help educate more physicians and practitioners. But first things first, they got to start wanting it, and they got to want it for themselves. Like you can't be a good parent unless you take care of yourself first, right? You can't take you have to always remember that our health, our mental health, our physical health really determines a lot of our life and our life activities. And it's no fun to have a broken back. So don't go there. Take your minerals.
Well, thank you, Doc. So, Robert Thompson, MD. That's the website that people should go to.
Or calciumlide.com or office at rgthompsonmd.com. There's quite a few websites that'll get to me. The most popular one is probably calciumlide.com, and that's one everyone always tries to steal. So if it's not taking you to me, it's not my site.
All right, calciumlight.com. That's it. We will have that. I'll try to get as many of them on the description so people can connect with you. Check out the supplements, that you have, because I believe those will be the right ones for us, in terms of what we need to take. Doctor, I know I've taken a lot more of your time and you probably have another consultation coming through. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the information you shared with us. It's a lot of good stuff here.
Thank you.
Good luck with the podcast, and definitely, let's stay in touch because there's more work we can do here to, disseminate the information to the world, and maybe we can help spread that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And if you're interested, do your own and let's talk about it when you get the results.
I am. I mean, I'm intrigued because you know what? You got to know. You want to see what's up, and maybe deficiencies will be there that I can tackle immediately, as opposed to waiting for the wrong things to happen. It's only
Yeah,
you're
it's
only
just,
getting older. You're not getting younger, so you want to make sure you're ahead of the game.
yep, exactly. I just turned 71, so I'm kind of like in the battle of life. Aging is a big battle. It's really something that we all have to kind of keep on top of. And spike protein disease is not helping. It's accelerating everything. drastically because remember, the toxicity is inside our cells and we can't stop it. And doctors don't know how to measure it. They're not looking for it. And so they're not finding it. And even if they did, for some reason, they seem to be in denial about it. Even when there's science to support everything that I say and other people say. So well, I don't know why there's attacks and personal attacks and medical board interventions and all kinds of stuff over knowledge that we're arguing about and learning about. And just because somebody has some sort of stinking stupid opinion, I tell everybody they're all like armpits. Everybody's got two of them and they both stink. Anyway,
That's a good one.
I know. Anyway, hey, till next time, I look forward to it, Hurricane. It's been wonderful.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Appreciate your time.
Very
Have a
much.
good one.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye. All right, folks. We come to the end of the show today. I'm Hurricane H. Hope you enjoyed this discussion. We'll be talking soon. New day, new show, new topic. Bye for now.